"You're not even invited," my fiancé's mother said, as they celebrated the rehearsal dinner I paid for. I smiled, turned to the hostess and nodded. 5 minutes later, security cleared the room. The look on her face. Worth every cent. "You're absolutely glowing, darling," Victoria said, her smile so sharp it could cut glass. "Though perhaps a softer lipstick? Red can be so overwhelming on camera." I stared at my reflection in the bridal boutique mirror, watching Sean's mother circle behind me like a predator sizing up prey. The wedding dress, my wedding dress, suddenly felt foreign against my skin. 3 months ago I would have laughed off her comment. Now it felt like another small slice, precise and deliberate. "Mom, she looks beautiful," Sean said quietly from the corner chair, but his voice lacked conviction. He was scrolling through his phone, barely looking up. This wasn't how I'd imagined dress shopping would go. Before we continue with Paige's incredible journey of reclaiming her power, I want to thank you for being here. If you believe women deserve to be heard in their own relationships, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need this story. Now let's see how this unfolds. When Sean first proposed 6 months earlier, everything felt magical. We'd met at a coffee shop downtown. Such a cliché story that we used to laugh about it. He was reading Hemingway, I was grading papers from my literature students. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, moving from books to travel to dreams we'd never shared with strangers before. He had this way of listening, really listening, that made me feel seen. "You're going to change my life," he'd whispered during our third date, brushing snow from my hair outside the movie theater. He wasn't wrong. He just didn't mention his mother would be the one doing the changing. The proposal itself was perfect. Candlelit dinner at the restaurant where we'd had our first official date, ring hidden in my favorite dessert. I cried happy tears, called my best friend Michelle immediately, started dreaming about our future together. Sean seemed genuinely excited, talking about honeymoon destinations and how he couldn't wait to introduce me to his extended family. "My mom's going to adore you," he'd said, squeezing my hand. "She's been waiting for me to find someone special." The first meeting went smoothly enough. Victoria Hudson was everything Sean had described: elegant, articulate, well-connected in their small city's social circles. She owned a successful interior design business and had what she called refined tastes. Her home looked like it belonged in Architectural Digest, all cream colors and expensive art pieces that probably cost more than my annual salary. "Paige teaches high school English," Sean had announced proudly during dinner. "She's incredible with her students." "How noble," Victoria had replied, her pause lasting just long enough to feel deliberate. "Public service is so important. Though I imagine the pay must be challenging." Sean laughed it off. I should have paid attention to how quickly he changed the subject. The suggestions started small. Victoria would text me articles about wedding trends, always with messages like, "Just thought you might find this interesting," or, "Not that you asked, but..." She'd forward me contact information for vendors she knew, claiming they offered family discounts that were too good to pass up. When I mentioned wanting a garden ceremony, she sent me photos of indoor venues. "Weather can be so unpredictable, dear. Wouldn't want your special day ruined by rain." When I showed her my dress choice, a simple, elegant A-line with delicate lace sleeves, she pursed her lips thoughtfully. "It's lovely, of course. Very understated. I just wonder if it photographs well. The cameras can be so unforgiving." Each comment came wrapped in concern, delivered with that practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. He'd nod along, offering weak agreements that felt more like appeasement than support. "She's just excited," he'd say whenever I brought up my growing discomfort. "She means well." That phrase became his standard response to everything. Victoria questioning my choice of bridesmaids? "She means well." Her insisting we use her florist instead of the one I'd already booked? "She means well." Her suggesting we move the reception to a country club that cost twice as much as our original venue? "She means well, Paige. She just wants everything to be perfect." Perfect for whom, I wanted to ask. But I bit my tongue, smiled, and tried to convince myself this was normal mother-in-law territory. Adjustments. Compromises. Part of joining a family. The breaking point came during our first official wedding planning meeting. I'd spent weeks researching vendors, creating spreadsheets, comparing prices. Sean and I had agreed on a budget, chosen a color scheme, Even tasted cakes at 3 different bakeries. I felt proud of how organized I'd been, how much I'd accomplished. Victoria arrived 20 minutes early. By the time Sean and I walked into the wedding planner's office, she was already seated at the conference table, my carefully prepared folder open in front of her, my notes spread across the mahogany surface like evidence in a trial. "I hope you don't mind," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "I was just sharing some thoughts with Jennifer here about the timeline." Jennifer, the wedding planner, looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Hudson was just mentioning some concerns about the vendor selections. Concerns? I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "Nothing major, darling," Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "Just that some of these choices seem a bit amateur. For instance, this photographer you selected, I've never heard of him. And the caterer you're considering? Well, let's just say their presentation lacks sophistication." She'd crossed out 3 of my vendor choices with red ink. Red ink? On my planning documents. Sean shifted beside me but said nothing. Just sat down and let his mother continue dismantling months of my careful work. "I've taken the liberty of reaching out to some vendors I know personally," Victoria continued. "Much more experienced. Better suited for the Hudson family standards." The Hudson family standards. As if I wasn't about to become part of that family. As if my last name would somehow remain secondary forever. "We discussed this budget already," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "These vendors fit within our range." "Oh, money." Victoria laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Sean, didn't you mention your father and I wanted to contribute more significantly to the wedding expenses? Consider it our gift." This was news to me. Sean's face reddened slightly, but he nodded along. We talked about it briefly. No, we hadn't. We'd specifically discussed keeping costs reasonable, splitting expenses between both families fairly. Now I was learning about private conversations, secret decisions made without me. The rest of the meeting blurred together. Victoria's voice dominated the room while Jennifer frantically took notes, crossing out my preferences and replacing them with alternatives that cost significantly more. Sean occasionally offered weak protests. "Maybe we should think about it," or "Paige might prefer." But he never actually disagreed with his mother. By the end of the hour, our modest garden party had transformed into an elaborate country club affair with upgraded everything. The budget had nearly doubled. My vision had disappeared entirely. "Isn't this exciting?" Victoria beamed as we gathered our things. "It's going to be absolutely stunning." Walking to the parking lot afterward, I waited for Sean to say something. Anything. An apology, an explanation, some acknowledgement that what had just happened felt wrong. Instead, he unlocked his car door and said, "Well, that went better than expected." That night, I called Michelle and tried to explain the growing unease in my chest. "Maybe she's just enthusiastic," Michelle had suggested. "Some mothers-in-law are really involved." But this felt different. More invasive. Like I was being systematically erased from my own wedding, replaced with Victoria's vision of what a proper Hudson family celebration should look like. 2 weeks later, I discovered just how deep her involvement ran. I'd arrived early at Sean's apartment, planning to surprise him with dinner after his late meeting. Using my key, I let myself in and heard voices from the kitchen. Sean, Victoria, and his sister Amanda. "Needs to understand how things work in this family," Victoria was saying. "Some of her ideas are simply inappropriate for our social circle." I froze in the entryway, hidden by the half-wall that separated the living room from the kitchen. "She's not from here, Mom," Amanda replied. "Maybe she just doesn't know." Exactly my point. That dress she chose, for instance. Far too casual for the venue we've selected. And her friend is maid of honor? I looked her up on social media. Definitely not the image we want in wedding photos. My heart hammered against my ribs. They were discussing my wedding, my choices, my friends, as if I were some kind of problem to be solved rather than the bride. "What do you think, Sean?" Victoria asked. The pause that followed felt eternal. I held my breath, waiting for him to defend me, to shut down this conversation, to remind his mother that this was our wedding, not hers. "You're probably right," he said finally. "Maybe I can suggest some alternatives." I backed out quietly, closing the door with shaking hands. Sitting in my car in his driveway, I stared at the engagement ring on my finger and wondered when exactly I'd become the outsider in my own relationship. The cracks weren't just showing anymore. They were spreading deep fissures that threatened to swallow everything I thought I knew about the man I was supposed to marry. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice whispered that this was only the beginning. 3 weeks before the wedding, my phone buzzed with a text from my college roommate Sarah. "Hey, did something happen?" I got a weird call saying the rehearsal dinner was cancelled for me specifically. I stared at the message, confusion turning into a cold dread. Sarah had been on our guest list since day one. We'd already discussed what she'd wear, where she'd sit, how excited she was to finally meet Sean's family. "What do you mean cancelled?" I typed back, though my fingers felt numb. "Some woman called, said she was the groom's mother. Told me there were unexpected budget constraints and they had to cut the guest list. Said you'd understand and would call me later to explain." Budget constraints. I sat in my empty classroom after school staring at that phrase. The same rehearsal dinner that had somehow tripled in cost thanks to Victoria's upgrades, now had budget issues? That evening I brought it up with Sean over dinner. "Why is Sarah no longer invited to the rehearsal dinner?" He paused mid-chew, looking genuinely surprised. "She's not. Your mother called her. Said there were budget constraints." Sean's fork clattered against his plate. I didn't know about that. Let me ask Mom what happened." But when he called Victoria, I heard her voice through the phone, sweet as poison honey. "Oh darling, yes, we had to make some difficult decisions. The venue has capacity limits and family should come first, don't you think?" "But Paige's friends are important too," Sean said weakly. "Of course they are. But Sarah can come to the actual wedding. The rehearsal dinner is really more for immediate family and wedding party members." Except Sarah wasn't the only one who got cut. Over the next few days, I discovered that my former teaching colleague Maria had also received a call. So had my neighbor Mrs. Chin, who'd been like a grandmother to me since I moved to town. 3 of my closest relationships, severed with surgical precision. Meanwhile, Victoria's Bridge Club remained fully intact on the guest list. Women I'd never met who knew nothing about Sean or our relationship, somehow qualified as immediate family, while my chosen family got dismissed. "It's just politics," Sean said when I pressed him about it. "Mom knows these people professionally. It's complicated." Everything was always complicated when it came to his mother. Nothing was ever simple, straightforward, or fair. The real shock came the following Tuesday. I was grabbing lunch in the faculty lounge when Sean's cousin Jake approached my table. "Hey Paige, quick question about Saturday night. Are you good with Romanos? I know it's not exactly your style, but Victoria seemed really set on it." I nearly choked on my sandwich. Saturday night? The rehearsal dinner? At Romano's Italian? This Saturday? My mind went blank. Romano's was an upscale restaurant downtown that I'd never even been to. More importantly, I knew nothing about any plans for this Saturday. "Jake, can you tell me more about what you know?" His face shifted, confusion replacing casual conversation. "Oh no. Did I just mess something up? I got this group email yesterday with all the details. Time, location, parking instructions. I assumed you were copied." Group email. Planning my own rehearsal dinner through group emails I wasn't included in. Jake pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. "Here it is. Sent Monday night. Has like 20 people on it." He showed me the screen and my stomach dropped. The email was from Victoria's account, with subject line, "Rehearsal dinner final details, Hudson/Morrison wedding." Every important person in Sean's life was copied. His groomsmen, aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends. The only person missing from the recipient list was Morrison. Me. The bride. "This is probably just an oversight," Jake said quickly, seeing my expression. "I'm sure." "It's fine," I interrupted, though nothing felt fine. "Thanks for letting me know." That evening, I confronted Sean with screenshot evidence of the email Jake had shown me. "You weren't included in planning emails for our rehearsal dinner," I said, keeping my voice level. "Care to explain?" Sean's face flushed red. "Mom was just trying to handle the logistics. She knows you're busy with work and wedding prep." "I offered to plan this dinner, Sean. I offered to pay for it. Instead, I'm finding out about my own event from your cousin in a school cafeteria. It's not that big a deal." "Not that big a deal?" My voice cracked. "Your mother is planning an event in my honor that I know nothing about at a restaurant I've never heard of, with people she chose instead of people I wanted there." Sean ran his hands through his hair. a gesture I used to find endearing but now recognized as his go-to move when avoiding difficult conversations. "Mom already booked it," he said finally. "The deposit's paid. It's just easier to go with her plan at this point." Easier. Always easier to accommodate Victoria than to stand up for me. "Sean, this was supposed to be our celebration. Our friends and family coming together before our wedding. How is it easier to exclude me from planning my own party?" "You're not excluded. You'll be there." "As what? A guest?" "At my own rehearsal dinner." He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Saturday night arrived with unusual October warmth. I spent an hour choosing what to wear, finally settling on a soft blue dress that Sean had once said made my eyes look like ocean glass. I wanted to look beautiful, confident, like someone who belonged at her own celebration. Walking into Romano's felt like entering enemy territory. The restaurant was elegant in that old-money way Victoria preferred. Dark wood, dim lighting, expensive wine displayed like trophies. I could smell garlic and rosemary, hear laughter echoing from the private dining room they'd reserved. The hostess, a young woman with kind eyes, greeted me at the entrance. "You must be here for the Hudson party? Right this way." As we approached the dining room, I could see through the glass doors. Victoria sat at the head of a long table, holding court like the queen she'd always imagined herself to be. She was telling some story that had everyone laughing, gesturing dramatically with her wine glass. Sean sat to her right, nodding along. His groomsmen flanked the table along with his aunts, uncles and several people I didn't recognize. The bridge club women were there, of course, clustered together like a small army of judgment. I paused at the threshold, taking in the scene. This should have been our moment. Sean and me, surrounded by people who loved us both, celebrating the life we were about to build together. Instead, it looked like a family reunion I'd accidentally crashed. The hostess opened the door and conversations gradually died as heads turned toward me. The silence stretched, awkward and heavy. Victoria's eyes found mine across the room. Her smile never wavered, but something cold flickered behind it. "Oh," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're not even invited." The words hit like a physical blow. 20 pairs of eyes stared at me, some confused, some embarrassed, some clearly entertained by the drama unfolding. I waited for Sean to speak up, to clarify, to stand up for me. He opened his mouth, then closed it, looking between his mother and me like a child caught between divorced parents. No one else moved. No one challenged Victoria's statement. They just watched, waiting to see what would happen next. My heart pounded so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Heat flooded my cheeks, but something strange happened in that moment of humiliation. Instead of crumbling, instead of fleeing, I felt a sudden, crystalline clarity. I smiled. Not a fake smile, not a polite smile, but a genuine expression of someone who had just realized exactly where she stood and exactly what she needed to do about it. I turned to the hostess, who had witnessed the entire exchange with wide, sympathetic eyes. "Now," I said softly. She nodded once, understanding passing between us like a secret handshake. The look of confusion that crossed Victoria's face was absolutely priceless. The hostess disappeared through a side door, and for 30 seconds the dining room remained frozen in confused tableau. Victoria's mouth hung slightly open, her wine glass suspended mid-air. Sean's face cycled through expressions: bewilderment, embarrassment, something that might have been panic. Then the manager appeared. He was a distinguished man in his 50s, wearing the kind of perfectly tailored suit that suggested Romano's took customer service very seriously. Behind him walked 2 security officers in dark blazers, their presence professional but unmistakably firm. "Ladies and gentlemen," the manager said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to handling delicate situations. "I apologize for the interruption, but we need to ask everyone to gather their belongings and relocate to our main dining area. We have tables prepared for you there." Victoria's confusion transformed into indignation. "Excuse me? We have a reservation. A private room reservation that was confirmed yesterday." The manager's smile remained diplomatically neutral. "I understand your concern, ma'am. However, the person who holds the contract for this space has requested its immediate availability." "Contract?" Victoria's voice pitched higher. "What contract? I made this reservation myself." "Actually," the manager said, consulting his tablet, "the room was reserved and paid for by Ms. Paige Morrison 3 weeks ago." All deposits, service fees and gratuities were handled by her at that time. The silence that followed was exquisite. Victoria's face went through several shades of red before settling on a pale, splotchy pink that clashed terribly with her emerald dress. "That's impossible," she sputtered. "I spoke with Jennifer about the arrangements. I chose the menu, the seating, everything." "Jennifer was acting as a liaison," the manager explained patiently. "But the financial arrangements were made directly with Ms. Morrison. She specifically requested that only she could authorize changes to the reservation or dismiss the party early. I had indeed called ahead. 3 weeks ago, the same day I discovered I'd been excluded from the planning emails. While Victoria was busy orchestrating her perfect family gathering, I'd been making my own arrangements with Romano's management. The conversation with the restaurant had been surprisingly straightforward. "I'm paying for a private dining room," I'd explained to the manager. "But there may be some family drama on the night. I need assurance that if things go badly I can clear the room immediately." "Certainly, Ms. Morrison. Would you like us to prepare alternative seating in our main restaurant?" "Please. And if this happens I'd like to continue my evening alone in the private room." "Can that be arranged?" "Of course. We'll have staff standing by." Now, watching Victoria's carefully constructed evening crumble, I felt a satisfaction deeper than I'd expected. This wasn't just about embarrassing her, though that was certainly a bonus. This was about reclaiming something that belonged to me. Sean finally found his voice. "Paige, what's going on? Can we just talk about this?" But he wasn't talking to me. He was looking at his mother, waiting for her to provide direction, to fix whatever had gone wrong. Even now, even in this moment of complete chaos, his first instinct was to defer to Victoria. "The lady asked you to leave," one of the security officers said politely but firmly. "We have tables ready in the main dining room, and your drinks will be transferred at no charge." Victoria stood slowly, her movements sharp with barely controlled fury. "This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Sean, do something." Sean opened his mouth, then closed it again, his eyes darting between his mother, the security officers and me. In that hesitation I saw our entire relationship laid bare. When forced to choose between his mother's comfort and my dignity, he chose silence. The exodus began awkwardly. Sean's groomsmen muttered among themselves, gathering jackets and purses with the efficient embarrassment of people accustomed to family drama. The bridge club women whispered frantically, their eyes bright with scandal they couldn't wait to share. Sean's Aunt Margaret paused as she passed my chair. Without saying a word she mouthed, "I'm sorry," and squeezed my shoulder gently. Her husband, Uncle Robert, nodded at me with what looked like approval. Jake, Sean's cousin who had accidentally revealed the planning emails, stopped at the door. "For what it's worth," he said loud enough for others to hear, "this whole thing was messed up from the start. You deserved better." Victoria whirled around. "Jake, that's quite enough." "No, Aunt Victoria. It's not enough. This woman was supposed to be family, and you treated her like an intruder at her own party. How dare you?" "Come on, Jake," his wife Lisa said, taking his arm. But she looked back at me with sympathy. "Good luck, Paige." Not everyone was supportive. Sean's sister Amanda shot me a look of pure venom as she gathered her purse. "This is so dramatic," she hissed to her husband. "Like something out of a soap opera." Her husband, normally quiet, surprised me by responding, "Maybe. But dramatic doesn't make it wrong." One of the bridge club women, Dolores I think, actually smirked as she passed. "Well," she said to her companion, "I suppose we know what kind of marriage this is going to be." "Actually," I said, speaking for the first time since my single word to the hostess, "you really don't." She paused, eyebrows raised. "Excuse me. You don't know what kind of marriage this is going to be. But you're about to find out." The threat in my voice surprised even me. Dolores hurried past without another word. Victoria was the last to leave, naturally. She stood at the threshold of the private dining room, her perfect posture rigid with humiliation and rage. "This isn't over," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You're absolutely right," I replied, meeting her gaze steadily. "It isn't." Sean lingered after his mother left, his face a mess of confusion and hurt. "Paige, I don't understand. Why would you do this? We could have talked." "We did talk, Sean. We talked when you let your mother exclude my friends. We talked when you let her plan my rehearsal dinner without me. We talked when you sat there and said nothing while she told me I wasn't invited to my own celebration. But this is humiliating for everyone. Yes, I said simply. It is. He stared at me for a long moment, perhaps finally seeing something in my face that told him how far past the point of negotiation we'd traveled. I'll call you tomorrow, he said finally. Maybe. After he left, the silence felt profound. The hostess returned with the manager, both wearing expressions of professional concern mixed with genuine sympathy. Ms. Morrison, the manager said, your table is ready whenever you'd like to continue your evening. I looked around the private dining room, candles still flickering, flowers still fresh, the table still set for 20 people who had just been asked to leave. The space felt different now. Cleaner. Actually, I said, settling back into my chair, I think I'll stay right here. The hostess smiled, a real smile this time. Would you like us to reset for one? Please. As the staff efficiently cleared away 19 place settings, I poured myself champagne from the bottle Victoria had ordered. Expensive champagne that I had paid for. The golden liquid caught the candlelight, sparkling like liquid jewelry. For the first time in months, I wasn't performing for anyone. Wasn't trying to fit into someone else's vision of who I should be. Wasn't walking on eggshells around Victoria's opinions or Sean's weak protests. I was just Paige, sitting alone in a beautiful room, about to enjoy an excellent dinner that I had chosen and paid for. The steak when it arrived was perfect. The steak had been perfect, but the silence afterward was even better. I drove home that night with the windows down, October air rushing through my hair, feeling more alive than I had in months. My phone sat silent in my purse. No frantic texts from Sean, no apologetic calls, no desperate voicemails trying to explain away what had just happened. Sunday morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through my apartment windows. I made coffee, scrambled eggs, and waited. Surely Sean would call. Surely he'd show up with explanations, apologies, maybe even some newfound backbone regarding his mother. He didn't. Sunday turned into Monday. Monday became Tuesday. My phone remained stubbornly quiet except for work calls and a few texts from concerned friends who'd heard rumors about something happening at the rehearsal dinner. Wednesday afternoon Jake called. Paige? Paige Jake. Sean's cousin? From the other night. Hi Jake. I was grading papers in my classroom, red pen poised over another essay about symbolism in Romeo and Juliet. I wanted to check on you. That whole thing at Romano's was, well, it was pretty intense. That's one way to put it. Yeah. He paused. Listen, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I think you should know. Victoria's been calling family members. She's telling everyone that you had some kind of breakdown, that you canceled the wedding yourself. The red pen slipped from my fingers, leaving a small mark across someone's analysis of the balcony scene. What exactly is she saying? That you've been under a lot of stress with work and wedding planning. That Saturday night was the final straw, and you decided you weren't ready for marriage. She's making it sound like you're having some kind of mental health crisis. A bitter laugh escaped my throat. Of course she is. The thing is, Paige, most of us who were there know that's not what happened. But Victoria's version is spreading to people who weren't in that room. She's good at this, making herself look like the victim. What about Sean? What's he saying? Another pause. That's the thing. He's not saying much of anything. Just that you two need some space to figure things out. Space. After 3 days of complete radio silence, Sean was telling people we needed space. That evening, I discovered just how thorough Victoria's damage control campaign had become. My phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. Someone had tagged me in a post. Curious, I opened the app. Victoria had posted a photo from Sunday brunch. She was wearing a cream-colored dress that looked suspiciously bridal, sitting at an elegant table with several women I recognized from the Bridge Club. The caption read, "Sometimes life doesn't go as planned, but we keep celebrating love anyway. #family first, #resilience, #never give up." The comments were a masterclass in passive-aggressive sympathy. So sorry to hear about the wedding troubles, Victoria. You're handling this with such grace. Praying for Sean during this difficult time. You raised such a good man. Some people just aren't ready for real commitment. Better to find out now. Not a single comment mentioned my name, but the implication was crystal clear. I was the problem. I was the one who couldn't handle commitment, who'd had a breakdown, who'd ruined everything. I screenshot the post and sent it to Michelle with a message. In case you wondered what gaslighting looks like on social media. She called immediately. What the actual hell, Paige? She's making it sound like you ran away to join a circus. I know. And apparently I'm having a mental breakdown too. You should post your own version. Tell people what really happened. No. The word came out more firmly than I'd expected. Let her play her games. I'm not going to defend myself on Facebook like we're in high school. But the social media post was just the beginning. Thursday morning, I received an email from Magnolia Gardens, our wedding venue. The subject line made my stomach drop. Cancellation confirmation, Hudson/Morrison wedding. Dear Ms. Morrison, it read, we received a call yesterday from Mrs. Victoria Hudson requesting cancellation of your October 29th wedding. She indicated that you were no longer able to proceed with the event due to personal circumstances. Per the cancellation policy, we are refunding your deposit minus the administrative fee. Please let us know if you have any questions. I stared at the email, reading it 3 times before the words fully registered. Victoria had cancelled my wedding. Without my permission, without Sean's apparent knowledge, without even consulting me. My hands shook as I dialed the venue's number. Magnolia Gardens, this is Rebecca. Hi Rebecca, this is Paige Morrison. I just received an email about a wedding cancellation that I didn't authorize. Oh. Ms. Morrison, I'm so sorry. Mrs. Hudson called yesterday and said she was handling the cancellation on your behalf. She seemed very familiar with all the details and honestly she sounded so official. She had no authority to cancel anything. This is my wedding, my contract, my deposit. Oh dear. This is very awkward. She specifically said you were dealing with some personal issues and couldn't handle making the calls yourself. There was again. Personal issues. The narrative Victoria was weaving to justify her interference. Rebecca, I need you to understand something. I never asked anyone to cancel my wedding. Mrs. Hudson is my fiancé's mother, but she has no legal authority to make decisions about my contracts. Oh no. Ms. Morrison, I'm going to need to speak with my manager about this. Can I call you back within the hour? 20 minutes later, my phone rang with more bad news. The photographer had received a similar call. So had the DJ, the florist, even the bakery that was making our cake. Victoria had spent her week systematically dismantling my wedding, vendor by vendor, using my mental health crisis as justification for her authority. Each vendor told the same story. A confident woman calling, explaining that the bride was going through a difficult time and couldn't handle the stress of making cancellation calls herself. She provided just enough personal details. My name, the wedding date, specific vendor information, to sound legitimate. Some vendors, like the photographer, had asked for written confirmation. Victoria had apparently said she'd handle that once Paige was feeling better. Others, like the florist, had simply taken her word and processed the cancellation immediately. By Thursday evening, I had a growing pile of refund confirmations and cancellation notices. My wedding was being erased piece by piece and I was learning about it through automated emails. Friday evening, Sean finally appeared at my apartment door. He looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his dress shirt wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. In his hands he held a bouquet of pink roses. My least favorite flowers, though he'd never bothered to learn that. Paige, we need to talk. I stood in my doorway, not inviting him in. Do we? I know you're angry about Saturday night, but this has gone too far. Canceling our wedding? Really? I didn't cancel our wedding, Sean. Your mother did. His face crumpled with confusion. What are you talking about? Mom said you called all the vendors yourself. Your mother lied. I pulled out my phone, showing him the email from Magnolia Gardens. She called them. She canceled everything. She told them I was having a breakdown and couldn't handle making the calls myself. Sean read the email, his face growing paler with each line. This can't be right. Mom wouldn't do this. Your mother has been planning my exit from your life since the day we got engaged. Saturday night was just the final performance. Paige, please. I know things got out of hand, but we can fix this. We can book everything again. Maybe have a smaller wedding, something simpler. Simpler. I almost laughed. Like your feelings for me? That's not fair. Isn't it? Sean, your mother told me I wasn't invited to my own rehearsal dinner and you said nothing. She canceled my wedding without my permission and you believed her story that I did it myself. When exactly in this entire relationship have you ever chosen me over her? He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. We both knew the answer. I love you, he said finally, as if that solved everything. Do you? Or do you love the idea of me? The version of me that your mother might eventually approve of. We can work through this. Couples therapy maybe. We can learn to communicate better. I took the roses from his hands, their cloying scent making me slightly nauseous. Sean, I need you to leave. Paige. Leave. Now. After he left, I sat on my couch with his roses in my lap and my laptop balanced on the arm of the chair. The cursor blinked in an empty document as I considered what to type. Finally, I created a new file and titled it simply, The List. Victoria wanted to play games? She wanted to manipulate and control and gaslight her way through my life? Fine. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated exactly how thorough I could be when I set my mind to something. And unlike her, I had receipts. The first item on the list was surprisingly simple. Sell the dress. I pulled it from my closet Saturday morning, still encased in its protective garment bag. The ivory silk that had once made me feel like a princess now looked foreign, like clothing meant for someone else entirely. Which I realized it had been. The listing went live on Still White at 2 p.m. Never worn designer wedding gown, size 8, ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves. Selling due to change of heart about traditional weddings. Within hours, messages flooded my inbox. But one stood out immediately. Hi. I love your dress. My fiancé and I are eloping in Vegas next month. Something small and fun, just us. Your dress would be perfect. Would you consider $800? I know it's below asking, but we're on a tight budget and this would make our little ceremony feel magical. Her name was Carmen and her enthusiasm bubbled through the screen. She sent photos of herself and her partner, both grinning widely in hiking gear, clearly the type of couple who'd choose adventure over convention. It's yours, I typed back. For $600. And Carmen, I hope your Vegas wedding is everything you dream it will be. When Carmen picked up the dress the following Wednesday, she tried it on in my bedroom. The transformation was instant. She glowed in a way I never had wearing it. It's perfect, she breathed, spinning in front of my mirror. I can't believe someone didn't marry you in this dress. Their loss, honestly. Actually, I said, watching her face light up, I think it found its way to exactly the right person. After Carmen left, I opened my laptop and made another addition to the list. Magnolia Gardens. The venue coordinator, Rebecca, answered on the first ring. Ms. Morrison. I'm so glad you called. We've been feeling terrible about that whole cancellation mix-up. How can we make this right? Actually, Rebecca, I'd like to book the venue again. Not for a wedding, for something else entirely. Of course. What kind of event? A celebration dinner. October 29th, the original date. For about 15 people. Absolutely. We'd be honored to host your celebration. The guest list wrote itself. Sarah, my college roommate who'd been unceremoniously uninvited. Maria from school. Mrs. Chen, my neighbor. Michelle, obviously. A few other close friends who'd supported me through the chaos. And surprisingly, Jennifer, the wedding planner who'd quietly slipped me her card after that disastrous first meeting, whispering, "Call me if you need an advocate." The theme came to me while browsing boutiques downtown. Liberation. No pastels, no soft florals, no demure anything. I bought a red dress, bold, unapologetic red that made my skin glow and my confidence soar. October 29th arrived crisp and clear. Walking into Magnolia Gardens felt like returning to reclaim stolen territory. The same gorgeous space that Victoria had tried to commandeer now belonged entirely to me. You look absolutely radiant, Jennifer said, greeting me at the entrance. This is exactly what you needed. The dinner was everything the rehearsal dinner should have been. Real conversation, genuine laughter, friends who celebrated my choices instead of questioning them. Sarah raised her glass during dessert. To Paige, who showed us all what it looks like to choose yourself. To liberation, I replied, and 15 voices echoed the toast. I'd hired a photographer, not for a traditional album but for something more powerful. The photos captured pure joy, Me laughing with friends, raising champagne glasses, cutting into a cake that read "Here's to new beginnings" in elegant script. That night I posted one photo to social media. No long explanation, no dramatic captions. Just me in my red dress, surrounded by people who genuinely loved me, with the simple title, "The Dinner That Was Really Mine." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments poured in from strangers. "You're a legend. This is iconic. Queen energy. Every woman needs to see this." But the private messages surprised me most. Women sharing their own stories of cancelled weddings, controlling in-laws, relationships where they'd lost themselves. One message particularly stuck with me. "I was supposed to get married next month, but my future mother-in-law has taken over everything. Your post gave me courage to postpone and figure out what I actually want. Thank you for showing me it's okay to choose myself." That's when the idea crystallized. 3 weeks later, I registered the business. Second Chance Celebrations LLC. The tagline came naturally, helping women reclaim their stories, one celebration at a time. My first client found me through Instagram. Rebecca, ironically the same name as the venue coordinator, had postponed her wedding after discovering her fiancé had been letting his mother make decisions without consulting her. "I don't want to give up on celebrating," she told me during our initial consultation. "I just want to celebrate the right things." We planned an Independence Day party for her 30th birthday, complete with friends who'd supported her through the breakup, and a cake shaped like a phoenix. The photos from that event became the foundation of my portfolio. Word spread quickly through networks of women who understood. Brides who'd been sidelined in their own weddings. Divorcees ready to celebrate their freedom. Women who'd chosen to leave relationships that diminished them. Each celebration was different, but they all shared the same energy. Women choosing themselves, often for the first time. The business grew organically. A feature in the local lifestyle magazine. Social media posts that resonated beyond my immediate circle. Referrals from satisfied clients who wanted their friends to experience the same liberation. 6 months after my liberation dinner, I was booked solid through the following summer. The letter from Sean arrived on a Tuesday, forwarded from my old address. His handwriting on the envelope looked smaller than I remembered, less confident. "Dear Paige," it began. "I hope you're happy now." He was engaged again, he wrote. To someone named Catherine who worked in Victoria's social circle. A junior partner at her interior design firm, appropriately impressed by the Hudson family legacy. The wedding would be small, traditional, everything his mother had always wanted. "I see your business is doing well," he continued. "Mom showed me the article about you in the magazine. She says you're helping women make impulsive decisions about their relationships." I laughed out loud at that line. Even in Sean's letter, Victoria's voice echoed. "I hope you find what you're looking for," the letter concluded. "I hope you're happy now." I was. Genuinely, completely, unapologetically happy. That evening I treated myself to dinner at Romano's, the same restaurant where everything had changed. The manager remembered me, seating me at a beautiful table by the window where I could watch the city lights flicker to life. As I raised my wine glass in a private toast to the woman I'd become, my phone buzzed with a message from a potential new client. "Hi Paige, I found your business through a friend. I just called off my wedding because I realized I was planning my mother-in-law's dream day, not mine. Can you help me plan a celebration that's actually about me?" I smiled, typing back, "Absolutely. Let's reclaim your story." The future stretched ahead, bright with possibility and entirely my own. The future stretched ahead, bright with possibility and entirely my own. But some stories require a proper ending, and Victoria Hudson had always been meticulous about details. My involvement with her downfall began accidentally, through a client consultation 6 months after Sean's letter arrived. The woman sitting across from me in my office was familiar, though I couldn't place her immediately. "I'm Diana Patterson," she said, extending a manicured hand. "I believe you know my story, or part of it." The recognition hit like lightning. Diana had been one of Victoria's Bridge Club companions, one of the women at that disastrous rehearsal dinner who'd whispered and smirked as I stood humiliated. "I owe you an apology," Diana continued, her voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of regret. "What happened that night was unconscionable. I should have spoken up." "Why didn't you?" Diana's laugh was bitter. "Because I was terrified of becoming Victoria's next target. You see, I've been on the receiving end of her particular brand of social warfare before. Over the next hour, Diana unfolded a story that made my own experience seem almost gentle. Victoria had systematically destroyed Diana's daughter's engagement to a prominent local family, spreading rumors about financial instability and social inadequacy until the relationship crumbled. The young woman had spiraled into depression, eventually moving across the country to escape the whispers. Victoria controls information like currency, Diana explained. She knows exactly which details to share, when to share them, and with whom. She's built an empire on other people's secrets and insecurities. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm not the only one she's hurt. And I think it's time someone did something about it. Diana wasn't wrong. Over the following weeks, I began hearing similar stories from unexpected sources. A florist who'd been blacklisted from Victoria's social circle after refusing to inflate prices for her events. A caterer whose business had nearly collapsed after Victoria spread rumors about food poisoning at a party. A young photographer who'd been excluded from high-profile weddings after capturing an unflattering candid shot of Victoria at someone else's celebration. The common thread was always the same: Victoria's need for absolute control, and her willingness to destroy anyone who threatened that control. The opportunity for justice arrived through Jennifer, my wedding planner turned friend, who'd maintained connections in Victoria's world despite our association. She's in trouble, Jennifer told me over coffee one Tuesday morning. The annual Children's Hospital Gala, her signature event, is hemorrhaging sponsors. Victoria had been chair of the hospital's fundraising committee for 8 years, wielding the position like a social scepter. The gala was her crown jewel, the event that cemented her status as the city's premier hostess. What kind of trouble? 3 major sponsors pulled out this month. Word is getting around about her methods. People are tired of being bullied into participation. I stirred my latte thoughtfully. How much are they short? About $50,000. Without that funding, they'll have to cancel this year's event. The hospital really needs that money. It funds their children's art therapy program. That evening I made some calls. Diana connected me with 2 other women Victoria had targeted. Jennifer provided contact information for several vendors who'd been mistreated. Within a week, I had a clear picture of Victoria's network of enemies, and they were more numerous than I'd imagined. The plan formed organically. We didn't need to actively destroy Victoria. We simply needed to stop propping her up. One by one, sponsors who'd supported her events out of social obligation quietly withdrew their commitments. Vendors who'd tolerated her impossible demands started declining her business. The foundation of fear and obligation that supported her social empire began cracking. 2 weeks before the gala, Victoria's assistant called the hospital's development office in a panic. They were facing a significant shortfall and needed to find emergency funding or cancel the event entirely. That's when I made my move. Children's Hospital Development Office. This is Marcus. Hi Marcus, this is Paige Morrison from Second Chance Celebrations. I heard through the grapevine that the annual gala might need some last-minute funding support. Ms. Morrison. Yes, we're in a bit of a challenging situation. Are you interested in sponsoring? Actually, I'd like to offer a major donation. $50,000, to ensure the event goes forward as planned. The silence on the other end was profound. Ms. Morrison, that's incredibly generous. We would be so grateful. I do have one condition. As the primary sponsor, I'd like naming rights for this year's event. Of course. What would you like the gala to be called? The Paige Monroe Foundation for Dignity Annual Children's Hospital Gala. I could hear Marcus typing. That's beautiful. The Paige Monroe Foundation for Dignity. May I ask what your foundation focuses on? Supporting women who've experienced social bullying and helping them reclaim their power. The contracts were signed within 24 hours. Victoria, faced with canceling her signature event or accepting anonymous funding from an undisclosed donor, chose preservation of her social standing over pride. She never bothered to read the fine print. The night of the gala, I arrived fashionably late, wearing a midnight blue gown that cost more than my first car. The ballroom looked stunning. Victoria's aesthetic sense had never been questionable, only her methods. But as guests approached the entrance, they couldn't miss the elegant banners displaying the Paige Monroe Foundation for Dignity Annual Children's Hospital Gala, in gold lettering. I watched from across the room as Victoria spotted the signage. Her face went through a fascinating progression of emotions: confusion, recognition, horror, and finally, a kind of frozen panic as she realized the implications. The master of ceremonies, unaware of the underlying drama, announced the evening's major sponsor with enthusiasm. "We're incredibly grateful to the Page Monroe Foundation for Dignity, whose generous contribution made tonight's celebration possible." Victoria, standing at the podium prepared to give her traditional welcome speech, visibly choked. The microphone caught a strangled sound that might have been surprise or rage. She attempted to recover, but her carefully practiced speech had been derailed by the introduction she hadn't expected. Someone in the audience, I never discovered who, recorded the moment and sent me the video later. Watching Victoria's composure crumble in real time was more satisfying than I'd anticipated. The cease and desist letter arrived 3 days later, delivered by a law firm whose letterhead screamed expensive intimidation. Victoria demanded I remove my foundation's name from the event and accused me of fraudulent misrepresentation. I responded by sending her a copy of the contract she'd signed through the hospital's development office, with my signature and foundation information clearly visible. She had approved everything, agreeing to naming rights without bothering to investigate the donor's identity. "No legal recourse available," my attorney confirmed after reviewing the documents. She signed willingly and accepted the funds. The contract is ironclad. I never married again, though not for lack of opportunities. My business flourished, my foundation grew, and I discovered that independence suited me far better than compromise ever had. Years later, women still approach me at events, some recognizing me from social media, others referred by friends who'd found their own strength through my work. Each conversation reminds me that choosing yourself over social expectations isn't just personal liberation, it's revolution. Victoria eventually moved to another city, her influence diminished by too many burned bridges and broken alliances. Sean and Catherine divorced within 3 years. Apparently, Victoria's involvement in their marriage proved as toxic as it had been in ours. I kept the video of Victoria's gala speech on my phone, not out of cruelty but as a reminder. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation or public humiliation. Sometimes it's simply building something beautiful from the ashes of what others tried to destroy, then watching them realize they never had the power they thought they wielded. The taste of victory, I discovered, was even sweeter than perfectly prepared steak. If this story of ultimate revenge had you cheering for Paige, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Victoria choked on her welcome speech seeing the Page Monroe Foundation for Dignity displayed at her own gala. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.